Dr. Rashid Ahmad Mahmood Salojee, rahimahumullah, who sadly passed away on the 2nd of December at the age of 87. And in paying tribute to him, we joined on the line by Dr. Ismail Vadi, and he is with the Ahmed Katrada Foundation, a board member of the Ahmed Katrada Foundation. Dr. Ismail Vadi, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome this morning.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you keeping this morning? And Jummah Mubarak to you.
Jazakallah. We haven't seen each other for some time.
I know, but really, obviously, we are talking this morning, paying tribute to someone who has made a huge impact, I suppose, in your life personally, but also what he meant for the broader communities that he served in more ways than one. You know, we're talking about someone who was a health professional, someone who was dedicated to the welfare of people, serving civil society, looking at it from a religious perspective. And we're talking about someone who was an all-rounder in more ways than one.
Certainly, I think Dr. Salojee, Rashid Ahmad Mahmood Salojee, people know him as Dr. Ram Salojee. It's a common name that was, familiar to people in Indonesia and in the country. He was an all-rounder. I think there are three things that stand out about him. One is that he was really a civic-minded community grassroots leader. Even though he rubbed shoulders with great leaders nationally and even sometimes internationally, he never forgot his base, his community, and did extensive work from the late 1960s in the Lenasia community, building organizations, working in organizations, and that's across the spectrum: health, welfare, education, religious, etc. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that he was a significant political player in the country. Certainly in the 1970s, when the ANC and other organizations were banned, I mean, Dr. Salojee's name was always in the newspapers, prolific writer of letters, skilled public speaker, talking all the time, commenting on issues that affecting the community locally, nationally, internationally. And in that way, he built his political profile. And then when the Transvaal Anti-Psych Committee was formed, remember, to oppose the South African Indian Council elections in 1981, Dr. Salojee came onto the executive committee. 2 years later, he was elected as the vice president of the Transvaal Indian Congress and the vice president of the Transvaal United Democratic Front, or the UDF. So that is, I think, important from the build-up of his political profile. And then when post-1994, when the first elections took place, Dr. Salojee was elected as a member of parliament. From Lenasia, we were 6 of us, so I was part of the team that went with him to parliament. And then he subsequently became a senator. And then eventually, as age came on upon him, he was moved to the Gauteng provincial legislature. So a public representative, a significant community figure, and also, a grassroots leader.
Definitely. Now, also, Dr. Ismail Vadi, for us, people like myself growing up, and, we always admired Dr. Ram Salojee, and together with people like Dr. Isub Jasad, Dr. Ismail Mamoniat, and these three doctors obviously had a very, very profound impact on us as young people growing up in terms of our political thinking as we were growing up and facing the challenges that the apartheid government obviously had challenged us with. Just for you personally, and I know I had the pleasure of interviewing, sitting for about 2 hours in the studios of Channel Islam quite a few years ago. But just for you personally, what sort of impact did Dr. Ram Salojee make in your life?
Doc was an inspiration. I think that's important. When there was virtually no political activity, he was a lone voice, together with his brother Ibrahim Salojee, a number of other people, Harun Badad, Mr. Pahad. I mean, these were the people who got involved in what was known as the People's Candidates. So around about 1974, 75, the apartheid government took a decision to have elections for local management committees. Now, I was about 14 years old then. And, Doc and his team, the People's Candidates, they won all the seats in Malaysia. And within a year or so, he realized that this was a toothless structure, dummy institution, unable to make any significant decisions. The city council was still completely all white. And then the team, the People's Candidate, resigned. It had a huge impact in the community. I mean, that was like the most visible political action taken in the community. Of course, before that, we had the raids around the death of Ahmad Timur in October 1971. A large number of people in Indonesia, Joburg, etc., were arrested. Dr. Momoniat was one of the people arrested. Dr. Casey Naik, from now living in Azadwan, he was arrested. So that had an electrifying effect. But what Doc and them did was that they took a proactive step to discredit an apartheid structure and to dismantle it. And that has quite an impact on young minds like ourselves. And we suddenly realized that, look, there is political activity. And then in the 80s, Doc was a life wire. He was the chairman of the Federation of Residents Association. As I said, he was on the Transvaal Indian Congress, UDF. He was detained during the states of emergency. Both states of emergency, he was detained. He was banned. So I think that is quite significant political involvement. And we always looked up to him as an elder. In the community, of course, people just knew him as Dr. Salojee. His patients adored him like they adored Dr. Jasad. Thousands of people would come to him. And in his own simple way, Dr. Salojee was an absolutely simple man. For those who know him, for better part of his life, he drove a Toyota Corolla. He never dressed ostentatiously. He lived, quite a simple lifestyle. A people's man, that's important. A grassroots people's man with a common touch.
Now, also in terms of his dedication, and I've seen this piece that you've written, and where you talk about, his late wife, Auntie Sarah, would complain about long, strenuous working hours. But this was now a man who never grew tired, actually, just dedicated and just looking at the sacrifices that he had made. And these were long, long hours that he used to obviously make these sacrifices. And also, with very little sleep, where you even mentioned that he never retired for the night before 1 a.m.
That's it. This man was a workaholic. We know he's belonged to, I think, to over 100 organizations during his lifespan. If I just take Lenasia, every known religious organization, Muslim organization in Malaysia, Lenasia Muslim Association, Lenasia Muslim School, OCAF, ZENZEF, Islamic Council of South Africa, Suleiman Nana Memorial. You can think of any organization, Islamic organization. Doc was a member of it, was part of its problems, its challenges, building those organizations. So, apart from his political life and his civic life, he also had a strong spiritual dimension to him and a moral element to his work. And in many ways, his work was about Islam, about propagating the values of Islam. Never used the word Muslim or religion, never ever. But through his efforts, through his work, practical examples, he emerged as a spiritual figure, as a religious leader. And then I think what is again important is just his level of religious tolerance. People across all faiths, Hindus in the community, the Christian community, the Tamil fraternity, people went to him for advice, for religious advice outside of the politics. So I think that level of religious tolerance, understanding, working together, working with other people in the service of the people, in the service of the community, these are the hallmarks of Dr. Salojee. And, I hope that future generations, younger people can be inspired by his example and by his legacy.
Well, certainly he was a remarkable personality. Now, just finally, Dr. Ismail Vadi, if there was one lesson that you would have taken from his life, what would it be?
It was about humility. Service with humility, no, clamor for recognition, no haughtiness, no pride. The man just worked and worked and worked until his very last days. Even when his Auntie Sarah passed away, I think people will know that Doc had his leg amputated. He was down. But if after or somebody came and said, Doc, we got a meeting, we're going to pick you up, we're going to take you to a board meeting, the man wouldn't hesitate. You literally have to sort of carry him into the car. He wouldn't hesitate. Until his last days, he was there, alert, in touch with the news, giving advice wherever people needed advice. And if he was called upon to do something, he would never hesitate.
Well, Dr. Ismail Vadi, Jazakallah for that and for your time with us this morning in paying tribute to the late Dr. Salojee, Rahimahullah. We make dua, Allah grant him forgiveness and Allah fill his qabr with nur and grant him the highest stages of Jannah, inshallah.
Ameen. Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, and that was Dr. Ismail Vadi, board member of Ahmed Katrada Foundation. And now we're going across to be joined by Brother Zeinul Abidin Kaji, and he's with Okaf, and also staying and paying tribute to the late Dr. Ram Salojee. Brother Zainul, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to you and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Brother Inayat, and thank you for having me on this very somber note of Dr. Ram Salojee, Rashid Ahmad Mahmood Salojee.
Yes.
Indeed, it's a very sad occasion for all of us. And I think I just heard Dr. Ismail Vadi also speaking about him. And it really saddens our hearts to see, a man who has really dedicated his life and his lifelong dream of social justice and humility and, fighting for human rights. To see him go is really sad for us. So it leaves a big hole in the community where, that a giant has fallen.
Well, certainly, and I suppose, for you also, and as I spoke to Dr. Ismail Vadi, and personally, in fact, he meant a lot because this was a man who did so much, who achieved so much, who inspired so many, and also a visionary. And this was a remarkable quality of Dr. M. Salojee.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, from my personal experience, having sort of lived in Indonesia from 1964 and being part of, the community there. And, he was also a family doctor. And apart from that, the kind of work that he was doing and the impact that he had in the lives of people in community organizations. And, even for us, when we started a youth program in the 1980s, he was the first person that we could approach and say, doctor, we want to do this, we want to do that. And he would readily give assistance, even when, there was a group called the Muslim Youth Movement. Whenever there were occasions that we needed assistance, venues or attendance at strategic meetings, strategic thinking, talking about community areas, problems concerning the community, and whether it was education, politics, social morality, whatever. He was the first kind of man, the go-to person in the community, because we all looked up to him as a father figure, as an advisor, as a counselor who could really guide the community and guide us as young people into areas of work that, we relied on his wisdom. And because of his approachability and his wisdom, I think, he made himself available to all and sundry. That was his character. And really, it's kind of our heart. I think we reach out to him, to his family, to, and of course we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah grants him the highest stages in Jannah.
I mean,
Allah grants him the accompaniment of the Mujahideen, the Shuhada, the Salihin, and the Nabiyyin, as we read in the dua, for people who have really made an indelible mark in the community.
yes. Now, Brother Zainul, obviously, I've known you for a long time, and obviously, very, very strongly, alhamdulillah, you obviously propagate and you feel very strongly about humanity, about serving humanity. And I suppose these were some of the lessons that you've learned from the life of Dr. M. Salojee in terms of service to humanity, being selfless, being compassionate, being tolerant, being considerate as well, and at the same time, just looking at service at the highest level, and that is exactly who Dr. M. Salojee was. Whether it had to do with his patients, whether he served on the various organizations, and Dr. Ismail Vadi mentioned close over 100 organizations that he served on.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt that Dr. Ram Salojee, rahimahullah, was a role model to all of us. His service to humanity, his humility, his compassion, his approachability, his simplicity. He had no airs about him. You know, his greatness was actually shown by his humility. You know, his he was not ostentatious. He was not you know, showing off any of his possessions or his wealth or the cars that he drove or any of that. You know, very very simple lifestyle that made him, that made us all feel very comfortable with him in his surroundings as well when he's with us. You know, so as a person. You know, and particularly, I think if I may relate to you with regards to OCAS South Africa, when we started here in the year 2000, the first presentation was done at the Nana Memorial Center, and he attended that particular meeting. And during that meeting, after that meeting, we at that stage, of course, it was just a presentation. It wasn't really even a formation. And we approached him and said, you know, Doctor, we would like you to support this initiative. Would you support it? And immediately, without hesitation, he said, yes, you know, I will support it. And we, afterwards, of course, we even approached him to become the first chairman of the organization. And he served the organization for around 9 or 10 years, you know, as chairman of the organization. And during that time, he gave us tremendous support. He wouldn't miss a single meeting. He would be, you know, every Sunday, every opportunity that he could contribute, he was able to contribute. And I think that is an example of true leadership. You know, that the man was able to sacrifice so much of his time for so many organizations. And I think, with due respect to Brother Ismail Vadi, I think it wasn't really 100 organizations. From our record and from Harun Aziz's interviews with him and the book that we published as a biography of Zeinul Cajee, Life of Social Justice, you know, he mentioned that there were almost like 300, almost 350 organizations that he actually served during his lifetime. And some of the organizations that he mentioned, you know, the Nana Memorial Trust, the Central Islamic Trust, the Malaysia Muslim Association, and of course various political formations, the United Democratic Front. But I just want to relate something that caught my eye in Harun Aziz's book on Zeinul Cajee, and he said that his father, Dr. Zeinul Cajee's father, gave him this counsel: serve the poor, the sick, and the orphans. The three things. He said, serve the poor, the sick, and the orphans. And this was taught by his late father. So this fatherliness was bestowed upon Rashid Khalifi when he was in matriculation class of grade 12 and repeated after he was qualified as a medical doctor. So this actually, according to Harun Aziz, sensitized his intelligence. He was really like, I think that was kind of embedded in his heart, in his soul, in his spirit, to serve. And that was his hallmark. He served. You know, if one has to just put it in one word, I would say he served. You know, there was no question about it. And he served without expectation of thanks or reward. And that is the kind of selflessness that we as youth and as community people need to take that kind of example. That when we serve, we're serving selflessly, without any thanks, without any reward, and without any expectation. The only recognition that we desire is acceptance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's it.
I mean, yes. Brother Zainul, Jazakallah so much for that and for your time with us this morning. And we continue making dua for Dr. Salojee and all the marhooms who have passed on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them all forgiveness and Jannatul Firdaus, inshallah. Ameen. And as always, we thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan, and all the best. Imam Mubarak to everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, that was the tributes we have paid to the late Dr. Ram Salojee, rahimahullah, this morning. And with that, we're going to wrap up. We're going to sign off. So, from all of us here at Salam Media, it's the end of another week. Have yourself a wonderful and an inspiring Jummah, inshallah, a great weekend. And until we meet once again on Monday, from all of us,